I had one friend who got into Oxford University, and one time he seriously asked a South African guy whether they had roads and hospitals in his country, while another time I saw a doctor try to boil an egg in the microwave. This is just smart people doing stupid things. But what about the people who commit terrific crimes? Then another question arises. Why smart people do evil things? Well, we have got an explanation if we go all the way back to ancient Greece. Socrates had it all figured out. He used the word Amathia, which was later used in Stoicism, and is defined as this knowledge instilled into the soul by bad upbringing and bad education, consisting in false values and notions and beliefs. This word is mainly translated as ignorance, as Socrates saw the birth of evil due to ignorance of a human. He stated that wisdom alone is the good for man, ignorance the only evil. While in another place he stated, there is, he said, only one good, that is knowledge, and only one evil, that is ignorance. For now, instead of focusing on the evil side of things, I'll start with the stupidity side of things. So in this case, Amathia is not preventable stupidity, where a person is not stupid due to lacking the natural ability to comprehend stuff, but rather refuses to learn. Thus the worst kind of stupidity, and intelligent stupidity. Amathia is a hard word to translate, so to further make the meaning clear, let's provide an example from Socrates' life, where he had a conversation with his friend Alcibiades, who was a general of an army and a politician. The conversation goes something like this. But if you are bewildered, is it not clear from what has gone before that you are not only ignorant of the greatest things, but while not knowing them, you think that you do? I am afraid so. Alack then, Alcibiades, for the plight you are in. I shrink indeed from giving it a name. But still, as we are alone, let me speak out. You're wedded to stupidity, my fine friend, of the vilest kind. You're impeached of this by your own words, out of your own mouth, and this, it seems, is why you dash into politics, before you have been educated. And you're not alone in this plight, but you share it with most of those who manage our city's affairs, except just a few, and perhaps your guardian, Pericles. Now Alcibiades was not ignorant. In reality, he was one of the most respected and educated individuals in the Athenian society. So in this sense, he is not stupid nor ignorant of his actions, but lacks wisdom. While Pericles, similar to Alcibiades, was educated, smart and wise, which made him a good politician. Now here the word Amathia describes the lack of wisdom that Pericles had and Alcibiades lacked. He was not willing to learn, which in fact is Amathia, or in other words, unwillingness to learn, which is the closest translation of the word. Now coming back to the idea that ignorance causes evil. Now this is a controversial statement as people misunderstand this concept and therefore are ready to bring out their keyboards for a Twitter rant. Of course, we cannot justify the Nazis for their crimes by just stating that they were ignorant, but Amathia helps us understand why they did the crimes against humanity. Kevin Kennedy, using Hannah Arendt's interpretation of Eichmann in her book Banality of Evil, explains that Eichmann, like the other main architects of the Holocaust, knew exactly what he was doing. He was aware of the suffering he was causing. He also recognized that he was violating every moral and ethical standard developed over 2000 years within Western religious and philosophical thought. He did so not just to please his superiors, as the Eichmann myth would have it, but out of passionate ideological conviction. He shared the Nazi belief that the Jews were a parasitical race preventing their racial superiors, the Aryans, from taking their rightful place in the world, and he went to great lengths to ensure their destruction. Now this shows that Nazis were aware of violating the ethics and philosophical thought of 1940s Europe, but the Nazis thought that such European thought was corrupted. They saw Jews as an obstacle for their flourishment of the Aryan race. This is one of the biggest examples of Amathia in the history. They were convinced that their morality was right, unwilling to learn whether it was actually right or wrong, thus suffering from Amathia. Another example from Arendt's interview describes a similar situation. She says, during the war, Ernst Jünger came across some peasants and a farmer had taken in Russian prisoners of war straight from the camps. And naturally they were completely starving. You know how Russian prisoners of war were treated here. And he says to Jünger, well, they're subhuman just like cattle. Look how they devour food like cattle. Jünger comments on this story, it's sometimes as if the German people were being possessed by the devil. And he didn't mean anything demonic by that. You see, there's something outrageously stupid about this story. I mean, the story is stupid, so to speak. The man doesn't see that this is just what starving people do, right? And anyone would behave like that. But there's something really outrageous about this stupidity. Eichmann was perfectly intelligent, but in this respect he had this sort of stupidity. It was this stupidity that was so outrageous, and that was what I actually meant by banality. There's nothing deep about it, nothing demonic. There's simply the reluctance ever to imagine what the other person is experiencing, correct? Now, why Amathia occurs has its own explanations. A person could be defenseless. For example, alcoholics are defenseless against alcohol. People try to reason with them that alcohol is bad for them because it leads to chronic diseases, but they never tend to fight against this temptation. This also applies to people who refuse to acknowledge any alternate opinions other than their own, while people also tend to avoid evidence and proofs. Continuing with the alcoholic example, he might think that his deteriorating health, unemployment, and broken family is the fault of everyone else, instead of accepting that alcohol might be the primary cause of such issues, thus suffering from cognitive dissonance. While if people are pushed by giving them an alternate view of reality, they tend to become defensive and even violent at times. Why? Because if we lose our belief, then we will lose the meaning of self, thus an existential crisis. Herd mentality is also one of the main reasons of unwillingness to learn. Who would want to go against the crowd and say an opposing opinion? Well, no one, because the individual feels happy to stay with people who are similar to him. Thus, religion, ideologies, and beliefs are another source of the unwillingness to learn. People perceive evil as bad things that people do, but it is not the case. No one thinks that they are evil. They don't commit evil things because they are bad, but because they are ignorant or simply don't want to learn. Amathia is really important for learning why people do stupid and evil things. It is not used for justifying the evil things that people do, but here we only see evil as a symptom of Amathia, not a justification. We need to create more awareness for the word Amathia, as we did with eudaimonia, as this word will not just help us to understand humans better, but to stop future individuals from suffering from Amathia and ultimately preventing the horrific occurrences of crime.